President's Colorado vacation draws to a close, but the chief executive doesn't seem to mind as long as they keep fighting this away. He hooks a beauty, which gives him a nice fight before being hauled in by the hand of an experienced angler. It's a far cry from this peaceful setting to the cares of state which await him, but when you can catch your legal limit in one morning, it makes even a presidential vacation perfect.
October 1955, a newsreel reports on President Dwight Eisenhower fishing in Colorado at the end of a lengthy vacation. The video shows President Eisenhower knee-deep in water, a fishing rod, and a fish. The opening graphic on screen says, "Vacations end. President goes back to grind after fishing." Here's how the September 20th, 1955 New York Times reported that fishing trip. President Eisenhower took a vacation from Denver Gulf today and settled in his Rocky Mountain hideaway for a week at the Trout Stream. Beginning the 6th week of his Colorado vacation, the president motored some 70 miles west and over the Continental Divide from Denver to the mountain ranch of Axel Nielsen, Denver banker and the president's longtime friend. At the so-called Denver White House, inactivity is merely routine. Here in a pastoral valley hemmed by soaring peaks and chilled by the coldest air in the Republic, it becomes a president's way of life. The president's change of pace to mountain fishing follows 3 weeks of daily golfing at various courses in Denver. He had opened his Colorado vacation with a 5-day stay at the Nielsen Ranch in late August. The atmosphere of Fraser has changed decidedly since then. The nighttime temperature has been vacillating between 14 and 24 degrees lately, and even the afternoon air has taken on bite. Autumn has daubed the mountain slopes with big splotches of flaming yellow where the frost has hit the aspen. That was the New York Times reporting on President Eisenhower's 6-week summer vacation in 1955. Whatever happened to presidents taking 6-week vacations? Where do presidents go now, and for how long? And what do presidents tell the public about their vacations? And why doesn't the New York Times write like that anymore? In this episode of C-SPAN's The Weekly, we find out. While you're returning from your vacations, we hear presidents talking about their own vacations. And then we talk about the clips with a special guest, America's foremost political junkie and top presidential observer. You know him as editor of National Journal's Hotline, and you've heard him on C-SPAN many times. And now he's in the C-SPAN radio studios. Talking about the history of presidential vacations, please welcome to the podcast, Kirk Bado.
Howard, I am so excited, honored, elated, probably as excited as President Eisenhower was when he hit that big one, to be here in the studio with you. You are quite the catch yourself.
Oh, well, we open with Dwight Eisenhower, but let's go one president earlier, Harry Truman. He vacationed in Key West, Florida. In this clip, we hear from Lawrence Knutson, author of Escaping the Gilded Age, an illustrated history of presidential vacations and retreats, written in partnership with the White House Historical Association. Lawrence Knutson appeared on C-SPAN in August 2009.
The president's shirts were loose, comfortable, and vividly patterned. Harry Truman spent a lot of time in Key West, didn't he?
He spent a lot of time in Key West. It turned out to be perfect for him. It was a place that, it was a military base, a submarine base. He actually at one point went down on a captured German submarine on his first vacation there. It was perfect because he could do what he wanted to. He could walk around the base. The sailors would essentially leave him alone if he wanted to be left alone, and talk to him if he wanted to talk. But he could get his work done in the morning. He could walk out to a beach the Navy had made for him, a sand beach. No sand in Key West, but the Navy made one. And take a nap in midday, wake up in time for the first of 2 poker sessions in which he really relaxed.
All right, Kirk Bado, any reaction to Harry Truman's vacationing in Key West, Florida?
2 poker games in a day is a lot for me. I usually do 1 a month with some of the hotliners, which, Howard, we need to get you a little bit more involved with. But the whole reason that I wanted to talk about vacations here is for kind of the description that Lawrence gets into here. It's this romanticization of the president and the office of the presidency as well. And I think there's no better look at it than the president on vacation and at leisure, and the amount of ink and media that we spend covering them on vacation. And it used to be a symbol of status for presidents to go on these trips. Earlier we had that clip of Eisenhower on a 6-week presidential vacation. Can you imagine Politico or the Axios headline if Trump took 6 weeks vacationing off somewhere? And so I'm fascinated by these vacation clips because it's a different way of looking at the president, ways that, were emphasized in movies that used to elevate the office of the presidency as well. I'm thinking of like The American President or Dave, even Air Force One, where they turned a Harrison Ford president into an action hero. It humanized the office of presidency, unlike now where it's very partisan. It's very hard coverage of the president. It's very divisive right now. And these clips that we're listening to today, I think, really emphasize this older idea of the president here.
So you mentioned coverage. Even though the president is on vacation, it is still an event that you cover. It's the news of the president is big, just like the president in the White House. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. There's a traveling press pool that goes with him everywhere, reports on his every movements. You have more recently former President Biden, when he would vacation up at Martha's Vineyard during Thanksgiving, the press pool would cover what shops he was going to do his holiday shopping as well. It's an event, and more modern presidents have framed their vacations as more of this is a working vacation. In Trump's first term, I'm taking very many meetings. I'm having the executive time, if you remember that from Sean Spicer as well. They spin it as we're working here. I'm going to go play golf in the afternoon, but I'm hammering out deals here.
All right, before we hear directly from the first president, and that's President Ronald Reagan, let me just ask Kirk Bado of the hotline, one question. Why do you like presidential vacations? Why does this interest you?
Howard, you and I were talking about this a while ago, but I'm fascinated by presidential vacations as well from one clip from George W. Bush. And as we sit here and record this, this week is the anniversary of in 2002, right before we were getting ready to invade Iraq. He's having a news gaggle at a golf course. He's in a polo. He's in golf pants. He's got a club in one hand. He's got the glove on his hand as well. And he is imploring the press here, who are carrying his remarks live. He goes, "I am imploring all freedom-loving nations to help bring these terrorist sympathizers to justice." Very pregnant pause. Now watch this drive. And it was immortalized in Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11. But I think that clip, it just really epitomizes this dichotomy of the presidential working vacation here.
And that set Kirk Bado on the path of presidential vacation junkiehood forever now.
Absolutely.
That's what inspired. All right, let's hear now from President Ronald Reagan. On vacation, Ronald Reagan didn't play golf. He rode horses, and he fired up his chainsaw. He vacationed at his Santa Barbara ranch up in the California mountains. Back at the White House on September 8th, 1987, President Reagan told this joke about summer vacations.
I thought it'd be good to get together now that we've all rested from our summer vacations. Although it's true summer vacations aren't always restful, you know that leads to a story. There was a fellow that was on his way to a mountain resort, and a policeman stopped him and said, "Did you know that you're driving without taillights?" And the driver hopped out of the car. He was so badly shaken that the officer took pity on him and said, "Well, now, wait a minute, calm down. It's not that serious an infraction." The fellow said, "It may not mean much to you, but to me it means I've lost my trailer, a wife, and 4 kids."
All right, there's a subsection for you of jokes about summer vacations from presidents.
Exactly, and I think this clip especially emphasizes that Reaganism and that Reagan touch of he was able to turn these potential serious questions about why are you vacationing right now into more of a joke. That was the soft people skills that people talk about all the time with Reagan, to turn what could be, a story, as he, leads with and acknowledges, into a funny anecdote, into a moment of levity with the reporters there.
And of course, Ronald Reagan famous, as we mentioned earlier, for going up to his mountains, the ranch in Santa Barbara, and chopping wood and clearing brush and riding horses with Nancy all day long on vacation.
Exactly. That's something that would be repeated by George W. Bush years later, where he would have these working vacations to his ranch down in Texas, where, yes, he was doing the jobs of the chief executive, but he was also seen with the cowboy hat on, the white T-shirt and the jeans, the boots, the workman's gloves on, chainsaw in hand, helping clear brush away from his ranch as well to help burnish that cowboy image.
And is that what inspired? I know some of these clips inspired you, Kirk. Did that inspire you to get your ranch in the California mountains? Is that where this comes from?
You know, Howard, I told you that in secret. But yes, that inspired me. You know, I got to be a Cowboy Kirk. Instead of Captain Kirk, it's Cowboy Kirk.
Next, President George H.W. Bush and Kennebunkport, Maine. During his August 1991 vacation to his house there, President Bush dealt with several pressing matters: a failed coup in the Soviet Union, nominating Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court, announcing his intention to sign a bill extending unemployment benefits to people out of work for over 6 months. Here he is talking with reporters in front of his house at Walker's Point, August 16th, 1991.
Kennebunkport.
A word for him?
Presence here has sort of sparked some I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Explain.
Protest and traffic has divided the town in some ways. Do you feel it all? Does it bother you at all that in a way your connection to the town is a burden as well as a...
Yeah, it does. It really troubles me about that. I think of that when we go to church, for example, and we hold up traffic. I don't know the effect that it's had on downtown. Some tell me that it's had a helpful effect on some businesses there. But yes, if you inconvenience people when you're taking your vacation, it is a matter that troubles me. And the patron saints of Kennebunkport town government that that we have been in touch with, Secret Service and others, say they've been very tolerant and very understanding. I don't like it that people elect to exercise their First Amendment rights by demonstrating in this small town, for example. I mean, it throws a burden on the law enforcement people. It puts a, I think it interferes, could possibly interfere with the normal lives of the people, in not only the year-round citizens, but people that come here for a vacation. So I do worry about it. There's supposed to be a big ACT UP demonstration coming up. Well, ACT UP has a reputation as being less than moderate. They have every right to exercise their First Amendment rights. But does it trouble me that they might descend on this town, this small little town here, and have some adverse effect on the people here? Yes, it troubles me, and I recognize that I'm the reason, the magnet that draws them here.
All right, Kirk Bado, he's talking right there exactly what you're talking about: working, vacation, and disruption of the community in Kennebunkport.
Exactly, and that's something presidents have to consider when they're going anywhere, is that they can't just go rent somewhere up in Dewey Beach or up in Bethany Beach now and go up to Ocean City for the weekend or anything like that. It's a whole parade that goes through disrupting everybody else's lives around them. And, you know, I'm not privy to some of these decision-making of the presidents when they decide to go on vacation, but they have to consider that it's a major disruption when you try to have the whole White House move anywhere in the country right now. And H.W. Bush here really is trying to grapple with that in real time.
So Kennebunkport, famous, he has a house near Walker's Point, and all the clips that we have in the C-SPAN video library show him doing work in front of that house, and the press corps is in front of them. Now, the press corps, I would imagine, has to stay in town. So it's not just the president disrupting, and President Bush talking about disrupting Kennebunkport. The press corps is there too. So like everybody comes into this small little town.
It's a whole traveling three-ring circus here. The attachés, if there's a national security emergency going on, like what we're talking about here with H.W. Bush, he has his foreign policy advisors there as well. And, for reporters as well, it's pretty disruptive as well going and traveling with the president. We talk about having pool duty here, but when you're watching the president just lounge around a pool all day, it gives a whole different meaning to the pool report.
Nicely done, nicely done. Next, President Bill Clinton. When President Clinton vacationed in Martha's Vineyard off the Massachusetts coast, he often golfed with his buddy Vernon Jordan, like on September 4th, 1994. In this clip, you can hear the crowd reacting to President Clinton hitting the golf ball twice.
Can't do that for long. It's not listening to other people on the
So, Kirk, Bado, I don't golf. I rarely go on vacations. I imagine for people who do golf and go on vacation, you frequently have people watching you hit the ball and cheering for you. Is that?
That's all the time. I just got back from a vacation where we had a whole traveling padre of people coming right behind us and everything, cheering every time. Beautiful shot right over the fairway. No, they don't. Presidents in golf is so interesting too because it's kind of used as an attack line against political opponents as well. If you appear to be spending too much time on the golf course instead of the Oval Office, that could be a liability for you. And presidents in golf have a very long history, going back to Eisenhower, who before Trump was probably our most preeminent golfing president. He has deep history at the Augusta National Golf Course as well, down where the Masters is played. He's got whole plaques and everything down there. He's instrumental in bringing that to prominence. But again, it could be a liability as well if you're not working hard enough out there.
So we played a clip of Ronald Reagan at his ranch in Santa Barbara. Then we played a clip of George H.W. Bush at his home in Kennebunkport. But Bill Clinton is not from Martha's Vineyard. He's from Arkansas. Why do you think he vacationed in Martha's Vineyard?
Because it's beautiful up there, for one. And also, he doesn't need to. He every day lives that image of the everyman. All the pictures of him going into McDonald's on the campaign trail, or when he's out running with Al Gore. He's Bubba. He is an everyman. He doesn't necessarily need to try to cultivate that image as much as someone like Ronald Reagan, the former California governor and president of the Screen Actors Guild, might have to, or George Herbert Walker Bush with his Ivy League pedigree has to try to show people that he can be a little bit more casual, a little bit less buttoned down. Clinton might not have those same concerns.
Great. By the way, I'm still enjoying the pool covering the pool. I'm still getting a kick out of that. Now, President George W. Bush. On January 12, 2009, George Bush held his final press conference as president. He got this question from Mike Allen, then with Politico, now Axios.
Michael Allen, Michael Allen.
Mr. President,
would be you.
Mr. President, often presidents leave here, they say they're going to decompress, and then pretty soon they're right back in their office. I wonder how quickly you think you're going to be back at it, whether it's writing your book, whether it's speaking, whether it's traveling, or it's overseas.
Mike, I don't know, probably the next day. I'm a type A personality. I just can't envision myself, the big straw hat and Hawaiian shirt sitting on some beach. Particularly since I quit drinking. Anyway, so I predict to you that, first of all, I'm not sure what to expect. For the last 8 years, I have had a national security briefing every day but Sunday. And when you get a national security briefing, it is a reminder of the responsibilities of the job. It's just a daily reminder about, what may or may not happen. The interesting thing about this job, by the way, is it's one thing to deal with the expected, what you anticipate. The real challenge is to be in a position to deal with the unexpected, and that's why those intel briefings are so important, because there's an awareness in the briefings by the analyst to try to help anticipate problems, and of course you hope they don't arise, but you better be prepared when they do, and that in itself creates gets your attention when you start thinking about what could happen. And the key there, of course, is that to take these different analyses seriously, and then have a structure so that your team will be in a position to analyze and then lay out potential avenues for the president, from which the president can choose. I say all that because this has been this notion about being briefed and thinking about this issue or that issue has been just part of my life for 8 years. People say, well, there you are in Crawford on vacation. You never escape the presidency. It travels with you everywhere you go. And there's not a moment where you don't think about being president, unless you're riding mountain bikes as hard as you possibly can, trying to forget for the moment.
All right, Kirk Bado of National Journalist Hotline, he's making the point that you've been making. You never escape the presidency, is what President George W. Bush said.
Right. I wonder whatever happened to that Mike Allen guy. I hope he landed on his feet here. But that's the whole nexus of this, that this is part of what interests me a lot, too, and it really is epitomized by George W. Bush with how much was weighing on him during his 8 years in office between the war in Iraq, Afghanistan, the financial crisis, Katrina. You can name anything that happened in those 8-year span at the beginning of this century here. And he's grappling with that in real time, with that question there about how it weighs on him all the time. And what's interesting about Bush on vacation especially is that the AP did a study a few years ago about presidential vacation days, and they found that George W. Bush spent more time on vacation, or at least outside of Washington, than any other modern president. He spent about 1,000 days on vacation, either down at the ranch in Crawford, like he's saying here, up in Camp David. And he's trying to make the point here that even if he might not be in Washington, he might not necessarily be in the Situation Room or behind the Oval Office desk, he's carrying that burden of being president with him everywhere he's going.
I'm so happy you mentioned Camp David, because that is, in addition to all these locations they go to, they always can go over the weekends to Camp David whenever they want as a vacation, but just as a respite or a retreat, as it were, over weekends.
And it's also somewhere that they can conduct presidential business as well, outside of kind of the scrutiny and the pressure of Washington. You've seen Bill Clinton bring foreign leaders to Camp David. You've seen President Trump now conduct business deals and host foreign leaders at his properties when he's on vacation as well. It's kind of like this added level of intimacy almost between world leaders and political and business leaders as well when you invite them into your vacation home that presidents can leverage.
It just occurred to me that you're an expert on, I love the stats, you're an expert on, we're talking about summer vacations, but we should have you back to talk about winter vacations, where they go in the winter, because this is very narrow. I don't want to leave out people who vacation in the winter.
No,
too.
absolutely. I'll come over during the holiday season here. Now that my folks are living down in Florida right now, so we've become winter vacation people now. So it's been fun.
All right, next, Barack Obama. And actually, we're going to play 3 clips for Barack Obama. The first, before he was president, October 20th, 2006, promoting his book, The Audacity of Hope. A few months before he announced his presidential campaign, here's Senator Barack Obama.
Essentially, the bargain that any president, I think, strikes with the American people is you give me this office, and in turn, my fears, doubts, insecurities, foibles, need for sleep, family life, vacations, leisure, is gone. I mean, I am giving myself to you, and the American people should have no patience for whatever's going through your head, because you've got a job to do.
The second clip is Jeff Mason, White House correspondent for Reuters. On August 13th, 2016, Jeff Mason spoke with C-SPAN. He was on Martha's Vineyard, covering President Obama's vacation.
So the president has come here nearly every year since he came into office in August for vacation with his family. He's chosen Martha's Vineyard for a variety of reasons. One, it's an island that's pretty easy for the Secret Service to secure. 2, it's got a lot of golf courses and he likes to play golf. And 3, it's a place where celebrity is respected. And I mean that by saying the locals here and the tourists who come here pay respect to the people who are public figures without sort of going overboard. And I think that's something that the Obamas have come to value and many others have come to value on this island.
And the third clip for Barack Obama, his September 17th, 2016 radio address. And he opens by turning vacations into something negative to say about congressional Republicans.
Hi, everybody. I've delivered a few hundred of these weekly addresses over the years, and you may have noticed a theme that pops up pretty often. The Republicans who run this Congress aren't doing their jobs. And guess what? Congress recently returned from a 7-week vacation, and they've only got 2 weeks left until their next one. But there's a lot of business they need to get done first.
All right, Kirk Bado of National Journalist Hotline, your reaction to any of that?
Well, again, this is the president weaponizing vacation, almost weaponizing recess as we're sitting here recording it right now. Congress has skipped town for their August recess. They're back in their districts in their home states with a lot of work left undone as well. And I think that's just going to be the common drumbeat here. What I thought was really interesting while I was doing the research for this was finding that clip of then Senator Barack Obama talking about the price of the presidency here and about how the American people put all their hopes, insecurities, their foibles into him, into the office of the presidency, and how it's a big sacrifice to do this. It's a big sacrifice to be president. Now, that's not to say that President Barack Obama during his 8 years didn't find time to still go on working vacations, as he probably said. It was about 350 or so days, according to AP, he spent during his 8 years on vacation. But I thought that was a real telling clip about how he is grappling with, almost in real time, the awesome responsibility of the presidency.
Now, it's interesting. I like you pointing that out. And actually, you're the one, Kirk, who found that clip, and it's great. At the time, in 2006, his kids were very young. Mm-hmm. And I guess both of them were under 10 years old. I can't do the math that fast. But he probably is thinking, as a dad, the kids go to Disney World. Kids want to go to amusement parks. And if you're president, you can't do that with young kids. Like, that's not a vacation anymore.
Right. That's to Jeff Mason's point there, that a lot of presidents like to go to Martha's Vineyard, for example. We talked about that with Bill Clinton a little bit earlier. The Obamas went up there too, because it is more of a celebrity-friendly community. If you've ever been to Disney World, if you see a Mickey Mouse walking down Main Street, USA, he's going to get mobbed. Now, if you put Barack Obama at that time and Mickey Mouse and Main Street, USA at the same time, I don't know who might get mobbed more. Mickey Mouse might have a little bit of an edge down there, but it's just, you sacrifice that. You sacrifice, especially with those two young kids, Sasha and Malia, you sacrifice those normal family vacations. You sacrifice that time with them as well.
Do you think they enjoyed Martha's Vineyard any more than they would have enjoyed Disney World?
The golf courses up there maybe a little bit less exciting than Splash Mountain, but I don't know for sure.
By the way, why this is now our second president with no connection to Massachusetts vacationing at Martha's Vineyard. Why? And I know you kind of answered this earlier, but I'll pose it again. Why Martha's Vineyard?
Well, for the case of Bill Clinton, I believe it was Barack Obama as well. There's a lot of Democratic donors up there as well who, in addition to writing checks to presidents, will also offer up their summer homes as well. You need to get out of town for a little bit. Here, keys are under the mat. We'll see you up there in a week. We're going to go into the city, or we're going to go be in Europe or something like that. And so it's a at cost vacation home up there, thanks to some friends of the program.
Now President Joe Biden, during a June 2022 vacation to Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, where he has a house, President Biden fell off his bike. Later, as he was strolling on the beach right next to the crashing surf, reporters asked him what happened.
Let me take a few questions and then let me walk with my family, okay? I'm feeling great. What happened was, any of you guys ride bikes? Well, they have some that have this thing you put your toe in. It constrains your foot so it doesn't slide off the pedal. When I was getting off the bike, it got stuck on the right side. I fell,
Let's get that you're okay.
All right, Kirk Bado.
Well, what's great here, there's two things about this clip I want to talk about here. Is one, finally a president who's vacationing where I vacation. Like, I've been up to the Grotto Pizza up there. I've spent way too much money at the Candy Kitchen up there as well. So that's what made this clip jump out to me here. But a little bit more seriously, a little bit more telling is that stumble off the bike in the first half of his term. I'm not going to say it foretold some of the problems to come, but it was one of those signs of problems and an accident that raised a lot of people's concern about Biden's age, about his physicality, about his ability to execute the office of the president. And then, lo and behold, 2 years later, he has that disastrous debate performance. And then shortly after that, he drops out. So that was one of the first kind of, everyone started doing sideways glances at each other. Like, are we sure this 75-plus-year-old can do this job here if we're all having mini heart attacks if he's falling off his bike in Rehoboth Beach?
By the way, your point about the beach is really interesting because when I was just going through these clips, they literally were at the edge of the surf. Our family, we go to Dewey Beach, Rehoboth Beach, but you can just picture the press corps is waiting for President Biden, and he's greeting people on the beach, like literally right where the water crests up, and the crew, the whole pool is there waiting for him. And I'm trying to imagine, like, okay, you can see the other presidents from a distance, and with the crew set up, but I don't know. Is it odd? Is it like, what kind of scene is that to have the whole press corps at the beach waiting for the president to come?
Well, that's right before this clip. We came in on this clip. It's just the camera is panning him around as he's just walking on the beach with, I believe it's Jill, on this, just again, places where you and I have been so many times, and there are families coming up to him. There's a young kid who comes up to him. Mom introduces him. Like, he's very accessible here. This isn't a place like Martha's Vineyard where he's on a compound or something like that, or down at the Crawford Ranch with Bush where he's surrounded by all sides by his fencing and his land and everything. These are people who, and Biden grew up in this area. He's got a house in Rehoboth, like you said. This is a very accessible. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he stopped for like a shaved ice with the guy on the beach driving around with a cooler.
And by the way, we heard in the Bill Clinton clip that everybody applauded when he's got a good hit in the golf course. I wonder if President Biden, if he built like a good sandcastle, would people applaud him there? I don't know if that.
Look, if he goes a little bit further south down to Bethany Beach, they have a sand building competition every Wednesday. If he wants to come enter in that, we'll hold the applause until we see his entrance.
Finally, President Donald Trump. We'll hear President Trump during his first administration, July 26, 2019, talking with reporters in the Oval Office.
What?
Are you planning a working vacation in Bedminster?
By the way, Bedminster's not a vacation. I don't go to Manhattan because when I go to Manhattan, I stay at Trump Tower, and I have to close up the whole city of Manhattan. So I go to Bedminster, which is a beautiful place, but it's never a vacation. It's working.
Are you planning
mostly.
a trip to Bedminster over an extended period of time?
I hope not, because I like working. I'd rather be right here, but probably over a short period of time. A lot of times you go and they do a lot of work in the White House. For instance, the Obama administration worked out a brand new air conditioning system for the West Wing. And it was so good before they did the system. Now that they did the system, it's freezing or hot in here.
Can I rephrase my question?
Yes.
Will you be spending an extended period of time working in Bedminster during the month?
Not extended, but for a short period of time. Meaning like less than a week. But again, I do that just officially, just to put it on the record. I do that because when I go into Trump Tower, they close up 10 blocks around the building, and it's Manhattan. New York City, it's a big, I don't want to inconvenience people. I don't get any credit for that, but that's okay. Whereas Bedminster, everybody, it works out very easily. It's a much easier thing. It's a great place, but I would love to go to Manhattan. I just don't like seeing the city close up. I've had to suffer living in Manhattan. I've had to suffer gravely as presidents would come in and come out, and the entire city would be shut down. So I guess I understand it better than most, right?
All right, Kirk Bado, that was President Trump in his first administration, 2019. Your reaction to that exchange with reporters in the Oval Office?
I got to get the tiny violins out for all the sacrifices that President Trump made living in Manhattan while the president's in town and he's shutting it down. He might also not like to go to Manhattan, not just because he's thinking about the average New Yorker trying to get through the streets here, but because there's not very many golf courses in that part of Manhattan Island that he wants to get to. But Trump has really owned presidential vacations, I guess, in a way that we haven't really seen. He's spending a lot of time down at his properties. He's spending a lot of the government's money at his properties as well because of the whole entourage of Secret Service and attachés that have to come with him and rent the rooms down at Mar-a-Lago, rent the rooms up in Bedminster. But he's really turned those properties into real working White Houses, which was a problem when he was out of office, and there was that controversy over all the secret and classified documents that were kept down there. You saw those pictures where it looked like there were files stored in the bathroom down there, the gold-plated bathroom down at Mar-a-Lago. But he's called it the Southern White House, and he's operated like that. And with the amount of time that he's spent at his properties, he spends most weekends there, it kind of has to be a functioning White House for him to get anything done.
Now, we are taping this, by the way, as you mentioned earlier, in early August, and he was over the weekend again in Bedminster, which seems like his go-to summer place rather than Mar-a-Lago. And I know it's kind of obvious that Florida, you go there in the winter, but does that seem the pattern that he is Bedminster in the summer and Mar-a-Lago in the winter?
He is a New Yorker. He is going to go to New Jersey in the summer. He's going to go to the Jersey Shore in the summer. And then in the winter, he's a snowbird. He's going to go down to Florida during the winter months. My dad runs a country club down there. He's a general manager down there. And his busiest months now are between late October until about late April, when everyone comes down for the winter, and then easiest months are in the summer, where everyone flees up north here.
President Trump, as you mentioned, and the Scotland is one of his properties, so he really has many places he can draw upon and travel to and go.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Scotland trip, because as we're sitting here recording in early August, about 2 weeks ago, he was up in Scotland for an extended trip that coincided with some family business as well. They were opening up the new Trump golf course up in Scotland. He was there, played the first official round up there, and it was really kind of unprecedented to see a president take a working trip like this, but not working on behalf of the American people. Yes, he did meet with European leaders up at his properties up there, but it was also there to promote the golf course that his family owns. And he said that he's going to create a blind trust here for his assets, but it really is about the family business up there and drawing attention to that. And as our own Georgie Condon Jr. wrote for National Journal, it's kind of unprecedented to see a president take a family business trip like this while he is in office, especially as Republicans during the Biden administration criticized members of the Biden family for trying to grift off the office of the presidency, grift off Joe Biden for their own business ventures.
Before we get to our bonus clip, 2 questions for you, Kirk. First of all, I forget, you mentioned this. You play golf or you don't play golf?
I am a great weekend warrior on golf.
Okay, all right.
I've tried to pick it up a little bit more.
You do? Okay. I play mini golf. I'm really good at the
You want to go to the East Potomac course here soon? I've been meaning to get out there.
I'm talking the shot. I'm killer at the windmill. Second question for Kirk Bado, editor of National Journal's Hotline. Tell us about National Journal's Hotline, what you do, how people can consume Kirk Bado content.
Oh yeah, well, Howard, thank you for having me on here. First off, you're an alum of Hotline and one of our big fans, so I always appreciate your support. Hotline is a twice daily political tip sheet. We come out at 9 a.m. and 11:40, and we are basically the daily rundown of all the campaign and political news that you need. We're a small team up at National Journal, but we try to cover politics in a fun, tongue-in-cheek way. We do the overlooks, we do shot chasers, we try to give you the campaign news that actually matters. We're not necessarily trying to be prisoners of the moment up here in Washington. There are plenty of other morning newsletters that might do that. We're trying to explain the moment for people and what actually matters. We cover campaigns all over the country, from the early machinations of the 2028 presidential race all the way down to governor's races. We got 36 next year, battle for the Senate, race for the House, state legislatures. We're following all this redistricting news pretty closely as well. If there's a competitive race for dog catcher, we probably have a Hotline correspondent watching it somewhere.
You've been there how long?
I've been there now 6 years. From July. July is my 6-year anniversary.
And how big is your staff?
We have a staff of I oversee a staff of about 7 or so people.
7 or so. It strikes me when you're talking about this. In my, this is going to be one of those in my day things. In my day, we never did original content. It was all covering the coverage. But Kirk Bado does it all. You do everything.
Since it was really started by my predecessor, Leah Scarinam. we really tried to emphasize more original content here. Yes, we are doing a lot of aggregation, trying to promote and get stories right from these local papers, these local news outlets, local radio stations that are covering the day in and day out of these campaigns outside the Beltway. But over the last about 4 years or so, and especially since I took over about 3 years ago, we've tried to do a lot more original content here. We've tried to do a lot more original reporting and analysis. Howard, I think back in your day as well, the newsletter didn't have any bylines on it, on the pieces that were in there. We've tried to really promote our reporters as subject matter experts as well. People are staying on the staff a lot longer now to where they can really hone their reporting skills, hone their analytic skills. Just the other week, actually, we published our power rankings of the 10 Senate races most likely to flip, the 20 House races most likely to flip, which is always a big lift for our staff. We're talking to dozens and dozens of people and organizations. But that's the type of stuff that we're trying to do more and to give our own spin and our own reporting analysis to this particular campaign moment.
And in fact, in my day, not only do we not use our own names, but if we ever had a reason to use a name, we had to use a nom de plume, a fake name. Mine was Shecky.
Shecky?
People knew who that was. Final content.
Shecky?
Yeah. Final question for you, Kirk, before we go to the bonus clip. Now, people want to consume, people want to connect with you, people listening on C-SPAN Radio, getting the podcast. What is the entry point for getting to you or the hotline?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. It's at Kirk_Bado. Also follow at NJ Hotline on Twitter X. We have a free version of our 9 a.m. newsletter that you can subscribe to right there. It goes out at noon. And we also have a podcast as well that I co-host with Ledge King and Jeff Dufour, two other editors as well. National Journal Radio, where we have guests come on to talk about, explain this political moment, and we also interview our reporters as well about the big stories that they're working on.
All right. And now a bonus clip. We've been speaking with Kirk Bado of National Journal's Hotline about presidential vacations. But what about Supreme Court justice vacations? Here's Chief Justice John Roberts speaking at a judicial conference in New York in May 2025. He's talking with U.S. District Judge Lawrence Filardo.
How do you keep some privacy in your life and have this kind of bigger-than-life role as Chief Justice of the United States?
Well, recognizable. My wife and I were on vacation in Portugal last year, and another American sort of came up to us, and he's looking at me and says, "I know you. I know who you are. You're John Boehner." And so, they were sitting next. I had to spend the whole evening pretending to be John Boehner. And so, when you say readily recognizable, really not, to be honest with you.
Any thoughts on that, Kirk?
I hope he really committed to the bit and just had a big glass of red wine the whole night and maybe like a cigarette between two fingers as well, just to really hone in on the John Boehner aspect of it.
So we need to get you back to do Supreme Court vacations, obviously, with your being a political junkie. We talked about presidential winter vacations. We need to get you back for that. But also, could you research and could you specialize in vice president vacations?
Oh, I'm going to have to dig in deep on that.
I can't think of a single one.
I'm trying to think of anything that Harris has done. Obviously, J.D. Vance has been traveling around a whole lot right now. He was actually, you know what? Full circle here. When he was out in California, he took his family to Disneyland. Remember that? And there was that clip of him doing the universal parent run of concern where he didn't know where his kid was for a second, looked around a little bit, eyes locked in on him, and then he just hurriedly ran to go find out what was going on.
Yeah, so if he runs for president, becomes president, do you see him at Martha's Vineyard? J.D. Vance?
I don't know if J.D. Vance will necessarily fit in Martha's Vineyard. I think he might be more of a Dollywood guy down in Tennessee.
Perfect. All right, Kirk Bado of National Journal's Hotline, thank you for joining us to talk about summer vacations taken by presidents of the United States.
Howard, thank you and your team for having me.